Alright, time to do something that I didn't do for quite some time, which is record without a script. Yeah, I mean, there were a few videos where I didn't have a script or I just went along reading through notes, like my original The Tau Empire Reimagined series was... The Tau Reimagined series was just bunch of notes that I constructed as I was studying at university. I basically was listening with one ear, but if subject wasn't interesting enough, or I felt that I didn't need to listen, I was just writing whatever on my laptop. Still finished with very good grades. So even though sometimes, or well, more often than sometimes, I was ignoring majority of the subject, I know how to learn and how to prepare for exams, so yeah, it turns out that you don't need to be that careful during university to pass with good grades. But you will have to work really bloody hard before the exams. How I'm glad that this part of university or my life is behind me. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. Today's video will have, I hope, relatively amusing subject for you, because it will be more casual. I want to talk about the reason why I moved away from writing in Polish and then moved to English, and at the end began recording my story. Yes, to those who do not know, I am a Pole, or a Polish person, a member of the greatest country on earth, Poland, and I will hear no argument against it. We are the greatest. You don't know how great our country is. Yeah, all the sarcasm aside, I started writing, goddamn, almost 15 years ago. Damn, I'm old. Yeah, so it's been a while. I started recording as a coping, or sorry, not writing as a coping mechanism because of my parents' divorce, which wasn't pretty at all. Amusingly enough, my father won, so I will allow you to connect the dots, what amazing type of person my biological mother is, that a female judge decided that in the divorce my father should raise the children. Yeah. I will not go into details, but it was an interesting moment of my life. Going to therapy, dealing with psychological manipulation from my beloved mother. I will not go into details, but I have some scars from that time, and I'm glad I have basically no contact with my mother anymore. So yeah, it's interesting to have that type of experience in your life, and then see how your stepmother is basically the greatest woman you ever knew. It's still confusing to me to know what type of person my mother is and how amazing my stepmother is. I thought my dad was happy with my biological mom, but no, not really. The thing that he has now with my stepmom, that's true love. That's true love. It's amazing to see it with your own eyes. Makes you believe that true love really exist. God damn, I'm mumbling again. Going back to the subject. So, yeah, divorce, the chaos of it, the problems with school, the bullying that I experienced, and I started writing. Initially for myself, to a drawer, as it is set in Poland, that when you write for yourself, you basically write so it could hide in your closet. And goddamn, my first stories were absolutely terrible. Then I tried with few different stories. My first story was post-apocalyptic, inspired by both Stalker and Metro 2033. If any of you know the books, the stories of Metro or Stalker, then they are great. I enjoy them greatly. Later on, I tried into fantasy, made like 3-4 attempts, and when I'm saying attempts, you must read or hear like over 100 pages of script, and all of it was absolute horseshit. It was terrible. Then I was pissed off, decided to take the fantasy world and move it 500 years into the future, more or less, and I ended up with my Fateless project, which is the steampunk, dieselpunk, fantasy World War I kind of story. It's complicated. I have a dedicated video. You can check it out on my channel. The 10K special. The 10K special. That time I created a world. That's the one. And all I just described was written in Polish. I was posting in few places, like a very small writing portal, and finally WhatsApp, a rather known writing portal, especially in Poland. In Poland, it's one of the more known for fan fictions and just amateur writers. I was very shy and self-conscious about my writing, never believing it's good enough to show it to people. Again, I started writing not for fun, but to deal with depression, with trauma, and I was writing for myself and nobody else. So, sharing it to a greater group of people was always a challenge for me. Not something I was ready to do right off the bat, yeah? But finally I did share my work, and I was absolutely ignored. Despite the work I put into it, despite a lot of fans that I did possess on my the smaller portal, one that I mentioned, and I decided that maybe if I interact with more people, if they see that I'm active, they will be ready to read my story and rate it. So I began to interacting with other Polish writers more, and yeah. Now, I'm not saying that there are no skilled or talented amateur Polish writers. No. I think there are a lot of really good bloody writers. One, which I came to know, wrote amazing horror stories. Amazing to the point, not a jump scare, because predictably you can't jump scare with a book, with, text of letters. but he made it so uncomfortable, so eldritch, so unnatural that I was skipping pages. I was absolutely terrified of the text, and it was good. It was well written story, but absolutely freaking terrifying. There were few romances that I really enjoyed. Yeah, laugh if you want, a man enjoying romance, screw you, I like it. I like romance. I thinking that romances are important in narratives. That is no clue towards Star Wars X440K in no way, shape or form. Don't worry. Yeah, I am not making any hidden foreshadowing for anyone listening. Anyway. Finally, I started to interact with people who were writing like historical romance, historical drama, just writing stories placed somewhere, sometime in history, which I started to truly enjoy. And when the news came out that I studied history and knew a thing or two about history, I was approached by a person who was organizing a small contest of such stories placed somewhere in history. And I was asked to become a judge. And I said, fine, I can judge 19th and 20th centuries stories, because that's the period I am best versed in. I really enjoy this period of transferring from 19th to 20th century. It's fascinating, in my opinion. And so I became a judge, and I was given several stories to read. And most of them were really fun, but one those who know me and my work know that anytime I bring up my most hated writer for the Tau, Phil Kelly, you can hear my distaste of that person, of his writing style and narratives he creates. I hate it. But I would, in every reality, in every timeline, prefer to be forced to read only Phil Kelly than to read one chapter of a certain author I was obligated to judge and rate during that contest. I forgot their name. I forgot the name of the Black Lady story. It was too traumatic. I just pushed it out of my mind. But I remember the story. And I need to share it, because the experience with that story, with this writer and the community around her story, is part of the reason why I moved away from Polish, or Polish writing and Polish audience. So, I'm sure you are just trembling with anticipation. What possible story can be so bloody terrible that heretical hatter, the guy who despises Phil Kelly with a passion, would prefer his stories than anything from that? Let me give you the setup. The story is set during World War II. Bit classic. Second, it's a romance. Cool. It's placed in Poland. We can already know that it will most likely be tragic. The story is presented from the perspective of a woman, which is fun because in horrors of World War II, Female experience and female perspective is interesting, especially because most of them, though some of them were on the front line, most of them didn't and had to, deal with the horrors of the occupation, especially in Poland, right? So the setup, initial setup at least, is interesting. However, who is the heroine? She is, in fact, a German woman from a German family that took a Polish name and basically Polonized themselves for the sake of trade, merchants, and basically their business. So the main heroine is a fake Polish, a fake Pole, which not a great opening. Or so you would think when you find out that she is with a Polish boy who is part of a partisans, part of a resistance movement, and she dumps him because he is goody two-shoe, he isn't interesting enough, and she starts a relationship with an officer of a Gestapo who is also an alcoholic, an abusive alcoholic. I will let you process what I just said. A fake Polish woman, in fact German, falls in love with an alcoholic Gestapo officer who initially thinks he can use her to get to the resistance movement and then just has an extremely toxic relationship with her. And if you think you can imagine how terrible that story is, no you don't. No, you don't know how terrible this story actually is. It actually is far worse than you can imagine. Remember that I was a judge who was rating not the narrative itself, or not only narrative itself, but also the accuracy of history, historical accuracy. That was like the most important part. And I had to deal with one idiotic statement after another, including, but not limited to, a Russian prostitute who sometimes was a companion of a Gestapo officer, was in relationship with a Polish fighter pilot who serves in Britain and sends her cigarettes. How a Russian prostitute had any relationship with a Polish pilot and somehow gets gifts from him is beyond idiotic. Especially after you find out that she is in fact member of... Oh god, I don't believe I have to say it. KGB. She is a spy. She is a Soviet spy as well. And she has listening devices from the Cold War. During Second World War that she left in the home of a Gestapo officer. If any of you have any understanding of history, you are already preparing to blow your bloody head off, but don't worry, this is nothing. This is nothing. This is, in fact, just the beginning. You have, like, inaccurate vehicles, like the flights with, civilian plane to Britain in the middle of the war, and civilian ships going from occupied Poland to Britain with Jews on board. Apparently, Holocaust didn't have to happen because Jews could just, jump on the boat and sail to Britain during war. Yeah, apparently. It would be convenient, but Yeah, that didn't happen for some reason. I wonder why. And I wonder why. I wonder why civilian ships from occupied Poland couldn't sail safely to United Kingdom. I have no idea. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Evidently my historical knowledge isn't enough to uncover this mystery. Then are constant abuses and this toxic relationship, which is it's make your stomach turn. You just feel ill as you read the abuse and how somehow this woman is attractive to this abusive drunk. It's just sickening. But without a doubt, for me, the worst scene of all was when they were for some reason going to like a ball or something like that, like a party, and this Gestapo officer gifted his, well, basically mistress at this point, a diamond necklace. A diamond necklace gifted by an officer of a Gestapo with strong connections with the SS. Now, I don't know how many of you are aware, but officers of the Gestapo were paid relatively well, but not well enough to purchase, a diamond necklace and just gift it to a woman you abuse for your own pleasure. Because that's basically the story. So, my main thought when I was seeing this scene was, from what corpse did you took this necklace off? Because that's the only reasonable answer to, how the hell did he got hands on something like that? And that was sickening. That was really uncomfortable to read and consider with my historical knowledge. And if you think that's the worst thing, don't worry, it was the worst thing that I read in regards of morality, but it's not the stupidest thing. No, the stupidest thing was like, I think it was attempt at a love triangle where an old fiancé of this Gestapo officer arrived again. And as it turns out, she is Jewish. And the Gestapo officer didn't know. Like, this is the moment when I wish I had like a camera, but I like my privacy, so you can't see my face, but you can imagine how flabbergasted I am, because how the hell are you, preparing marriage with someone, to marry someone, to be, spend the rest of your life together, and you have no bloody idea that they are Jewish? Even more, how the hell did a Jewish woman fell in love with an officer of a Gestapo who are like the main tool designed or tasked with extermination of her people? One of the main tools, like, what? How do you even approach something like this? How? Thankfully, I didn't read any further. This was like the requirement, how many chapters I had to read, and for obvious reasons, I didn't go any further, because it was a torture to go even through one chapter of this terrible, atrocious, just awful story. I lack the words to describe how terrible that story was. Like, again, you heard the examples. You heard the examples. It's, again, lost for words. Lost for words. So, predictably, when the time was to read the story, I was as ruthless as I could. I mean, this story got the lowest rating from every judge. I wasn't the only one, but yeah. Hell, looking at overall ratings, this was the most devastating, the lowest score that any story got from all the judges. All the judges that took the part in, rating. And I thought this would be it, that some inexperienced amateur, stupid, like, with awful fetishes writer wrote something, threw it into this contest, and got, their ass kicked by my ratings, and just, will rethink their life and their writing. That didn't happen. In fact, I was attacked. Not only by the writer herself, but her fan base. This... I don't want to tell story because it doesn't deserve to be called story, but this abomination had a fan base, and they were furious that someone could rate it so low. Even though I wrote very long and precise review of this horror, explaining point by point why I gave that kind of writing and no other. And yet, suddenly I was under constant assault of the people who just couldn't handle the fact that I found this abominable story disgusting and just sickening to the core. And this experience really showed me what is like the worst part of the audience you can find, like the worst readers and writers you can find. Of course, not just in Poland, but all over the place. But when I realized that for some god, demon, Satan, forsaken reason, this kind of story has a lot of hundreds of fans, and my story is ignored despite the amount of work and previous praise I got from it from over forum, I started considering is it worth it to write for Polish audience? I mean, if they consider something like this good, what the hell I am trying to accomplish there? So I started digging quite a bit, and I found out that if you try to publish anything in Poland as a writer, you are screwed. You are very, very, very screwed. You are... your situation isn't great. It's in fact absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. The writer market is oversaturated. There are big corporations that basically control majority of the market, and they dictate the rules. And if you are a small fry, you will be squashed. You will not earn anything from it. You can't be a writer in Poland, but hope you have a second job or the main job, and writing is your hobby, unless you will somehow become a second Sapkowski. But don't count on it. So yeah, after digging and after experience with that story, I left Wattpad for good, and I started looking into English stories. I started reading in English I said that story before, but I started. Well, it needs a little bit more of a setup. During the university, as I was finishing my historical studies, my historical specialization, I wrote a paper, a bachelor's paper on Holodomor, on Great Ukrainian Famine, and the subject was depressing enough. I had to, have something completely different. In fact, it was so depressing I stopped writing at all for quite some time. Then I started reading in English ludicrous, like sci-fi erotica sexy space babes by Bluefish Cake. It's quite amusing story. One of the videos I made in the past is about it, so you can find it without a doubt on my channel. I will go to more detail there, but yeah. That story allowed me to, bounce back because it was not only well written, ironically, despite the title, despite the title of Sexy Space Babes, somehow this was, well written, it was amusing, and it had good action, it had good romance, and look, a bit of a secret thing, it's hard to write a tasteful erotic scene. I struggled with it a lot in the past, and without a doubt I will struggle with it in the future. Bluefish Cake somehow nailed it every single time, which is impressive, at least in my opinion. He managed to write tasteful erotica, mixed in with actual entertaining and well-written story, sci-fi story, which is, hard to imagine, and yet, here we are. This inspired me to start writing fan fiction in this setting, although before that, I tried to just take my old Fateless project and translate it into English by putting it into translator and translating it, raw, which wasn't great, but I tried, it didn't work out. Then I started writing fan fiction, reading, listening more. As I mentioned, I wrote the Tau Empire Reimagined project during university, just for fun. And then I stumbled at a fan with too much time and his Star Wars versus Warhammer 40k series. And because I saw that someone just wrote a story, decided to record it and just go with it. And he found a lot of fans, a lot of support, and wrote a really entertaining story. I sat up and started recording my notes on the Tau Empire Reimagined, which was my very first series. Then I started my Damocles Gulf Crusade rewrite project, which fell apart absolutely, and I don't plan to returning to it. If I will have to reimagine and rewrite it from the ground up because, it wasn't great. I was using too much AI. Way too much AI. I allowed myself to be carried away with a this initial wave of the AI craze, of AI art, as they now call it, which is AI art isn't art. It's AI image generation. It's not real art, and it's something that I do not like about that project and myself of that time, that I was so open about using this technology. I was a bit reckless, but I also didn't have any money at all. And only later on, when I started getting some money and convince people that, hey, donate to the budget so we can have, amazing art gallery, did that change? So yeah, I'm happy that this project in the end fell apart, and now that I can, commission true artists and true art. Anyway, but yeah, the reason why I moved to English was because of my experience with that terrible story and with Polish both writers and readers. Some were just absolutely terrible, and some were just blatant copies of greater works with no true intelligence. But I think that my understanding how limited the Polish market is, because what countries use Polish? Well, Poland and no one else. So if I wanted to be somewhat successful and I wanted someone to hear what I have to say, what I can create, I needed alternative. And English is perfect. English is the lingua franca of this age. Through English, I can communicate to dozens of countries and dozens of people, including Poles. There are quite a lot of you Poles in the community, in my audience. So, hi, fellow Poles. I hope that you are giving me that typical Polish smile, which translates to a frown in the rest of the world. So, keep it up. Keep sunny attitude towards the world, as always. And yeah, more importantly, I saw that people with seemingly silly ideas can achieve success, because a fan with too much time created, a narrative crossover, a fanfic audiobook, and he got a shit ton of fans, a lot of supporters. Like, he achieved true success. And he inspired me to go to YouTube. But before that, other authors, including Bluefish Cake, who later on published his stories, showed me that even if you write a goddamn sci-fi adventure light erotica, you can also, reach a lot of people, create thriving community with dozens of fanfic authors who just, enjoy writing, enjoy exchanging ideas. And, I am still, though on the lesser degree, part of that community still. So, I saw that the English-speaking community has more opportunities. That's it. Probably could be the entire damn video, just limited to one sentence, or a question and a sentence. Why did I move from Polish to English? Because English offers more opportunities in regards to, earning money and reaching more people. And both the question and answer to it are obvious, but they weren't to me. Again, I was shy about sharing my stories because of a reason why I started to write. When you start to write because of, traumatic experience, you are not thinking about sharing it with, the greatest amount of people. Quite the opposite, you want to keep it to yourself. And the same way, if you write something dumb, there is greater chance more people will mock you if you write in English or in language that more people can understand. Even so, I'm glad that I finally grew enough to make such decision. A decision to write in a language where more people can understand me. but I decided to record my stories, to use my voice, which was a process as well. I mean, this channel is currently, at the time of recording, little over 2 years old. And I was writing for more than a decade. This YouTube phase is relatively new. It was a long process for me to move from writing for myself, writing on small forum in Polish, writing on big forum in Polish, writing in English on small and then later forums, and finally moved to YouTube and recording my voice and sharing my ideas, to commissioning artists and voice actors to become part of my story, of my narrative, having fans, fan art, fans who give their voice to different characters. I mean, for crying out loud, not long ago, I got my first fan animation. BD1106 made a fan animation for my story. How do I even express my excitement? Hell, Artificial Dragon, my good friend, the host of Can Mayonnaise Kill a Jedi podcast, commissioned an artist, Necrocephalpod, to create an art depicting Twi'lek Tau auxiliaries. Who could have expected things to escalate to this extent, this quickly? Because I didn't. Like, I am still a very small channel. This whole YouTube thing is less than 3 years old. And in some way, I'm wondering what would happen if I never became brave enough to share my work, or if I was scared enough to abandon writing altogether. Would I experience even a fraction of joy, excitement, and irritation of creating things on YouTube? I mean, I started as a sad, miserable kid who was writing to retain some parts of his sanity during terrible divorce, and now look at me. Over 13,000 subscribers, a well-received crossover fanfiction story, a narrated audiobook, basically, a full art gallery for this project, both of commissioned art and fan art, now with fan animation and fan works. Like, there were very dark moments in my life. Very dark. And now, despite all the insanity in the world, I find myself being surprisingly happy. It's strange, really. It's strange to accept being happy when you were miserable for so long. But maybe that's the lesson for all of us. That sometimes, as cliché and as silly that sounds, dreams do come true. Just not in the way you expect them to be. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to write books, and in the future I will probably still write a book or two or more. But somehow this desire to be a writer manifested in me becoming a YouTuber. I am still a storyteller, just different than I expected. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's better. You might never truly know how big of a leap for me it was to move from Polish to English and to gain enough confidence to use it as much as I do now. But still, I am grateful. I am grateful that I made that move. I am grateful for endless support and for the friends I've made on this path. I mean, Artificial Dragon, who turned out to be amazing help. Hayden Lumpkin, first the artist who created fan art, now someone who I commission regularly. Fellow YouTuber, Killer Studio, so many of my fans. I am... Again, it's still hard for me to believe that I am so happy with my life now. Despite all the stumbling, all the stupid decisions I've made in my life, I ended up here, and I am happy where I am, and I'm happy with where I think I'm going. And honestly, that's a thing that I wish for everyone. To be happy where you are and happy with a thought where you are going. I am extremely grateful that I managed to reach this place both through my own hard work and support of so many people, too many that I can count. Alright, I spoke long enough. I hope that I didn't bore you too much and that you enjoyed the gameplay of Dying Light 2 in the background. I send my best regards to all my fans, all my friends, and all of my supporters. But I think that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed. Now then, my dear viewers and listeners, remember, wherever you are, whatever you do, try to enjoy yourself while you can. I wish you most critical day. Ta-ta!